So with the changing of the substitute rule from 3 to now 5 subs being permitted, I don't think there's been much in-depth analysis about how this changes the game. Sides now can change another 20% of their outfield players in one match, now allowing a side to change 50% of their outfield players instead of 30% before the pandemic. This obviously gives a huge advantage to sides who have quality and depth, as now they can use more of these quality players from the bench without doubt having a major impact on a team's results in the long run. But how do Manchester United stack up in this area? When people compare who the best sides in the league or in the world are, they seem to only look at the starting 11. However, we know that every side is going to pick up injuries and suspensions over the course of a full season, and every side would of course benefit from a greater variety of quality options from the bench. But before I go any further, let me tell you about the sponsor of today's video, OneFootball, which is a place where if you are in the UK or Ireland, on the app you can watch one Italian Serie A game every Saturday. Last week it was Empoli versus AC Milan, a few weeks ago it was Napoli v Lazio, this week it's Bologna v Sampdoria, and you can also get stats and highlights from other leagues as well on the OneFootball app, so make sure you download it. It will be linked in the description. By downloading the OneFootball app you will be helping to support the channel. I would say that compared to City, United of course pale in comparison. If everyone was fit and City used their starting lineup that they did against United in the 6-3 demolition, they would still be able to bring on the likes of Mahrez, Julian Alvarez, Rodri, Sergio Gomez, Ruben Diaz and Laporte off the bench. United did have Martial and Ronaldo on their bench along with Fred, Casemiro, Victor Lindelof and Elanga, which is still nowhere near the quality of City's despite Casemiro, Ronaldo, Fred and Martial still being excellent game-changing options for Ten Hag. City just have great strength and depth in nearly every position on the pitch. Just look at the centre-back, central midfield and the wide attacking options at Pep's disposal. But to be honest, everyone else in the league struggles to compete with City's strength in depth as well. Arsenal are reliant on players like Fabio Vieira, Lokonga, Emil Smith-Rowe, Tierney and Nketiah from the bench, whilst Chelsea have to rely on Conor Gallagher, Broja, Pulisic, Ruben Loftus-Cheek, Ziyech and Azpilicueta. Liverpool have Jota, Darwin Núñez, Harvey Elliott, James Milner, Tsimikas, Carvalho and Gomez as their main options off the bench, and Tottenham have Bissouma, Jed Spence, Richarlison, Oliver Skipp, Matt Doherty, Ryan Sessegnon and Davinson Sanchez as their bench options. So we know that City would be at number 1 for their squad depth, but where would United sit when compared to the other big 6 clubs? Well, first we need to define what exactly makes a good bench and gives a side true quality and depth. I would say that there are 7 different roles that bench players can fill. By bench players I just mean players who are going to be playing the majority of their minutes each season coming off the bench as a substitute. So the first role on the substitutes bench is of course a backup goalkeeper. Now a backup goalkeeper most seasons is rarely going to be used apart from maybe the cup games. Although I do think it's worth having a backup keeper who, like the starting keeper, suits your style of play, as the last thing you would want as a side like City, Arsenal or United is having a backup keeper who when he comes onto the field forces you to switch up your system, having to go longer from the build up or drop the defensive line to make up for their lack of sweeping ability. Ideally you'd have a keeper who would fit the style and was a penalty saving specialist, like someone like Willy Caballero for example, as you never know when you might want the opportunity to switch keepers for penalties at the end of a cup game, with Louis van Gaal bringing on Tim Krul for Jasper Cillessen against Costa Rica in the 2014 World Cup being the most famous example that comes to mind. The next role would be one of the 3 that I would consider to be a defensive role, not including the keeper, and it is what I call a third centre-back. I call it a third centre-back because that is literally what it is, a centre-back who can come off the bench to not only replace a centre-back in the back 4, but also slot in alongside 2 existing centre-backs as a third in the back 5, or even as a makeshift fullback if needed, with Victor Lindelof and Rob Holding being 2 examples of third centre-backs in the Premier League, with either being able to be utilised in a centre-back pairing, as a makeshift right-back, or in a wide centre-back position in the back 3. For Sir Alex Ferguson, this was the role of Wes Brown and Mikael Sylvester, with Phil Jones also being utilised in this role towards the end of Fergie's tenure. The second defensive role is a utility man, which is a player who can play a number of different defensive roles, usually as a central midfielder, a wide midfielder, a fullback or even a centre-back at times. This player has to be versatile and competent in a few different positions. Previous Manchester United players who would fall into this category would be John O'Shea, who I think literally played every single position on the pitch, including goalkeeper, during his United career, but mainly featured as a defensive midfielder and a fullback during his peak, but also someone like Phil Neville, who was from the generation before John O'Shea, who could play as a fullback from either side, or as a makeshift central or wide midfielder. Players like Lucas Vazquez, James Milner and Ruben Loftus-Cheek are all examples of players who can play in at least 2 different positions, and so offer the versatility from the bench that top sides do need on occasion, during big games and in big moments. I think in an ideal world this would be McTominay's role in Ten Hag's United side, although I think this is more likely to come as he gets into his late 20s, as right now I don't think he has the experience or the know-how to play in a position other than central midfield to a decent enough level to be fully considered a utility player, and the same goes for Fred as well. Even though Fred and McTominay don't quite fit the utility man role, they do fit the third defensive role on the bench, which I would call the water carrier. I discussed the water carrier role in depth in my McTominay analysis video, using Federico Valverde as a specific example, and he is definitely the best in this role at the moment in world football, I would say, and although Fred and McTominay are some way off his level, this would probably be the best role in the squad for those two, with both being able to do the basics that are demanded. A water carrier the majority of the time is a midfielder who is essentially used as an alternative central midfielder, usually not having the creativity needed to be the side's main deep line playmaker, nor being an out and out ball winner either, and so their role is to provide the athleticism, pressing and defensive work rate to a very high level defensively, whilst also being good progressors of the ball, whether this is driving the attack forward with the ball at their feet, or being able to find forward passes quickly after a turnover. McTominay and Fred for now are the 2 natural options in this role for Ten Hag, whereas the likes of Moussa Sissoko for Tottenham, John Obi Mikel for Mourinho's Chelsea, and Darren Fletcher, Owen Hargreaves and Ji-Sung Park all played this role for Sir Alex Ferguson's Manchester United at different points. So that's 4 of the potential roles on the bench, and the first of the attacking roles is what I would call the creator, which is a player who can come off the bench and provide a unique creative threat, whether this be through long and incisive passing in the final third, as Cesc Fabregas provided for Conte's 16-17 title winning Chelsea side, where he would come on and turn a 3-4-3 possession shape into a 3-5-2 and operate in front of Kante and Matic as an advanced playmaker. Players like James Ward-Prowse and James Maddison, who whilst being key starters for Southampton and Leicester respectively, could certainly play this role off the bench for England, providing top level crossing ability from set pieces and during active play that really no one else apart from Trent Alexander-Arnold in the squad can provide. This can be especially useful when a side is chasing a game and can't break through the centre of the opposition's deep defensive block, and so have to take advantage of space out wide via players with exceptional crossing or players in central areas with the ability to unlock the defence with their creative passing. Ideally, I would say that Christian Eriksen would be perfect for this role if he was not United's only deep line creator and had to start pretty much every game. If United had someone like De Jong as their first choice starter with Eriksen as a backup and alternative option, I think then this would be the kind of depth that Ten Hag needs long term to be able to compete with City, and I think Eriksen would suit what he'd be tasked with, which would be to come on when United are losing or drawing and struggling to break down a deep defensive unit. Eriksen's crossing ability from either side, as well as his general creative passing ability, would provide an additional and alternative threat for Ten Hag's attack, whilst he would also provide quality from set pieces as well. To link with the creator, a target man poacher or at least a striker who can be a threat inside of the box is very useful as well, offering an extra goal and offensive aerial threat when a side needs it, likely in the last 30 minutes of a game. Ferguson used a number of different types of strikers throughout his tenure in this role, from Solskjaer in the 90s to Luis Zaha in the mid-2000s, all the way up to Javier Hernandez later on in the early 2010s. At the moment it would have to be either Martial or Ronaldo that fulfill this role for Ten Hag, though both would feel that they should be starters. However, at the moment neither are nailing down a starting position. Olivier Giroud, Daniel Sturridge, Solomon Kalou and Divock Origi are all great examples of this type of forward. This is a player who has a poacher's instinct in the box and only needs one opportunity to put the ball into the back of the net, with all 4 of these examples being exactly this kind of striker. This type of striker will usually not be an all-round centre forward, likely specialising in being a poacher or a target man, and so it's better coming off the bench when a side needs a goal, rather than starting the game where they may not have all the necessary attributes to be the system's main centre forward, as we saw with Olivier Giroud at Arsenal and Chelsea, with players like Jermaine Defoe and Peter Crouch also being used in this role very effectively throughout their careers. The 7th and final bench role is an attacker who is a ball progressor or a runner, either a player who can carry the ball forward when the attack is being transitioned quickly, or provide the movement in behind the backline to stretch the opposition and get into goal scoring positions. Richarlison is this type of player at Conte's Tottenham, Foden, Grealish or Mahrez, depending on who isn't starting, provides it for City from the bench. Anthony Elanga and maybe Marcus Rashford provide this ability for Manchester United if neither start. And for Sir Alex Ferguson, we saw a number of different players play this role, from Jesper Blomqvist and Lee Sharp in the 90s to Nani towards the end of the 2000s, all being this type of player that could come off the bench and provide this ball progression via running with the ball that would suit a more expansive game where Sir Alex Ferguson wanted United to counter quickly after a turnover. We've seen Marcus Rashford be used as this type of impact sub throughout his United career, with Jose Mourinho favouring bringing on Rashford when United had a lead, as his pace would provide United the running in behind to take advantage of the spaces left by the opposition as they push players forward to try and get an equaliser. And this is exactly what a runner or a dribbler provides from the bench. The ability to offer either the ball carrying ability to dribble with the ball and progress it into the final third, or a player to provide the runs in behind into the final third and can be released via long through balls. And this is usually when a side is struggling to retain possession and every attack is breaking down and just handing the ball back to the opposition. Theo Walcott provided this during his early Arsenal career, as his electric pace combined with his dribbling allowed him to drive the Arsenal attack forward, with his dribble from the edge of his own box and subsequent assist for Adebayor against Liverpool in the 2008 Champions League quarter-finals being a perfect example of what this type of substitution should bring to the side. The problem that I think United have is that at the moment Ten Hag and the board in general have only just started a complete rebuild, and so don't have the luxury that City have to go out and spend 30 to 40 million pounds on a backup fullback like Sergio Gomez, a centre back like Akanji or Ake, or a midfielder like Calvin Phillips to simply bolster their squad depth. And so United have to take a different strategy to building an ultimate squad that can compete with City in terms of the squad depth. And the way to do this is by making your current starting players your future substitutes and backup options. What this means is that rather than simply buying a backup option in midfield or attack, you instead sign players who are going to improve your starting 11 and therefore demote your current starting players to the bench, where they can then fight for their position. For example, I think Antony and Sancho are players who should be vying for the same starting position, given that both players have a similar style of play, role and inconsistency due to their youth. If United had a top level wide attacker on the left, starting week in week out, then Ten Hag has Antony and Sancho sharing minutes either on the left or right flank, with one starting and maybe the other coming on with 20-30 minutes to go to change the game from the bench. The same can be said for players like McTominay and Fred, who realistically shouldn't be United starters, but could make excellent water carriers from the bench. Lindelof is a player who I think is an excellent option as a third centre-back, being a player who may not be good enough long-term to be a starter for Ten Hag, but a player who I still think is hugely valuable, and his ball-playing ability and versatility aid him in this role as well. United don't have any utility men off the bench as options, which isn't really a massive problem, though maybe bringing someone in the summer like Jurrien Timber for example, who can play in a few different positions, could be hugely valuable at multiple different points in the season. As I've said before, I think the creator substitute role is perfect for Eriksen, but United would obviously need an upgrade in central midfield before he becomes a non-starter. I think Elanga's role at the moment has to be as a runner off the bench, as I just don't think he has the quality to be a starter, but long term, I think United need to bring in a starting striker and maybe another wide attacker as well, and this means that one of Antony or Sancho could become this player off the bench, with Rashford also being an outstanding option off the bench as well in certain games. Ronaldo won't be at United beyond this season, and United still do need a centre forward, so I could see Martial playing this poacher role off the bench, and it probably is one of the most vital substitute roles, as this is a type of player who tends to make the big differences in big games. And so United's problem isn't that they don't have the players to fulfil these bench roles, is that these players currently have to be starters because the starting 11 isn't good enough. Improve the starting 11 and you'll subsequently improve United's bench simultaneously. So let me know what you think in the comment section below, give the video a like if you enjoyed it, subscribe to the channel and click the bell so you get notified when my videos come out, and check the description for more videos as well.